Welcome, friends, to another Sunday evening. It's just after 7 now, and this is part 2 of our talk on how to set up your own generational family fund. Now, it might seem like a bit of a wrong topic to choose for this challenging times that we live in, where we're almost in month 2 of the lockdown, and the news all around us is about the severe economic distress that's experienced by everybody, and even people that very stable, successful businesses are just closing down. But you know what? This is the time to start thinking about the future, because today is today, but the future is what you imagine, your mind, the people you surround yourself with, and the decisions that you agree to as a family. Now, last week we went into the topic, and we started off to just introduce it to say there are kinds of ships: ownership and stewardship. And stewardship is the generational kind of thinking where you don't just work for now, but you work towards the future, and in your mind's eye you have that massive cruise liner that can handle all your third generation's families and all their interests, and behind it all the support of all the different disciplines, versus what people are just focused on the here and now to try and swim by themselves, maybe have a little rowing boat, and some people might have a speedboat. But we say that's okay until the storm appears. And when the storm comes, you don't want to be in the water alone as a swimmer or on a rowing boat or on a speedboat. You want to be on a cruise liner with all the tools and technology and the stabilizers, so you can weather out the storm while you're enjoying your life in luxury. So to get us there, we said, how do you go about designing your generational fund? And then we gave you the pictures there of the first step is decide and commit. And last week we spent the whole session then on going through each of those topics. How do you identify disabling versus enabling attitudes? How can you know yourself and accept your uniqueness? What are the spiritual laws you need to understand and work from? And then calling that first family meeting. And then we just quickly went through the rest of it. So tonight we'll be focusing on establishing a starting point, values, wealth, and beliefs. And then from next week onwards, we will start looking into the actual constitution and go into depth, and it might be a topic that takes us over 2 sessions. And then elect a family board, elect an outside member for the board, then develop your 100-year plan for the family, and then implement and manage and adjust your plan as you go on. So tonight we're in part 2, where we're going to talk about establish a starting point. And under that, we're going to focus on 3 items: your values, your beliefs, and what is wealth, and how do you go about establishing a starting point for wealth. So when we look at values, what we going to talk about is then the definition, the how to determine your values as a family, and then some value statements. And I want you, as you listen to this topic, and we record all of this so that at the end we can make the video available to everybody. And I see some people raise a hand, but unfortunately I can't handle it now. I have to just carry on with the message. I'll handle it right at the end. So look at all of this from the perspective that you want to start a family fund, and you've had that first family meeting, and now one of the things you need to do is, as a family, to decide what are your family values. So when you look at definition, what Wikipedia tells us, value denotes the degree of importance of something or action with the aim of determining what actions are best to do or what way is best to live, or to describe the significance of different actions. That might not make too much sense just yet. Another definition says values are principles or standards of behavior, one's judgment of what is important in life. When I wrote the book in 2017, I made the definition that the values that the family members agree to and hold dear becomes the default behavior in times of disputes and family agreements. So it's very important that as a family, you might individually have a few different values, but at least at the core, you must as a family agree on some of the core values. So how do you go about establishing what are those core values? Get your family together and then brainstorm possible values and give everyone a clean sheet of paper. And then ask yourself a question. Think of 3 people that had a positive input in your life. When you think of them, what values do they embody? And then whatever words come to you, like outgoing or honest or character or whatever words that come up to them, those are words that you then write down, and you think of each of those 3 people along that way. Then also think of some difficult choices that you had to make in life where it wasn't black and white, it was like gray, and you didn't have enough information to go on. So what finally swung your decision and that you made a decision? So think of difficult choices and see what values come out of that. Then maybe you faced some difficult people. Now, we're all different, so what made them difficult? What was it about them and their behavior that put you off? And then the opposite is then your values. So sometimes by knowing what values you don't like, you get a better idea of what values do I like. And then also think emotionally. Think back when you were really upset and really frustrated. In that time of being really upset and really frustrated, what was it that made you feel so upset and so frustrated? And it might well be that something happened or something was imposed on you that clashed with your personal values. So write it down. So the brainstorm just means don't now become judgmental. Just write down whatever you can write down. The next thing is then group the values. Then as a group, start saying, all right, honesty but basically falls in the same category as transparency, integrity, candor, directness, truth, and start having groupings of various values. Sometimes you find the value stands all by itself. Nothing else is in the same vein. But that's your second job as a family, to come up and group the values. The third one then is, if you have a group of values, pick the one that you feel is the controlling value. So in that example of honesty and transparency and integrity, I've just for the sake of this exercise said, let's say integrity is our controlling value. And then when you have to describe integrity, you obviously then use words like honesty and transparency and candor and directness, truth, to unpack your understanding of integrity. Then pick the top 5 values. And for each of the values, write a value statement. And the value statement would then be where you bring in all these words of that grouping and use as emotive language as possible. And then the final thing to just make sure that these are actually your 5 top values. Ask yourself individually and as a family, can you identify with them going forward? And understand that this exercise can always be repeated every year, every 6 months, because as we get to understand ourselves better and circumstances change, we might be forced to tweak on some of these values. Now, what do we mean by value statements? So in that example, I've just taken another group of values: health, energy, vitality. And we said that the controlling value is health. And then the value statement would then read something like this: my values is health. By that, I mean to live with full vitality and energy every day. Can you see how we've used the other two words into the sentence? So that's about values, and the best is to go out and actually do it individually and as a family. Right, the next one is to look at beliefs. Here we have to ask ourselves the definition, but beliefs about what? And then I give a few examples right at the end. Now, Wikipedia says belief is the attitude that something is the case or it's true. And then they've got a big word there. In epistemology, philosophers use the term belief to refer to personal attitudes associated with true or false ideas and concepts. However, belief does not require active introspections and circumspection. And a big problem in our world today is how we are so strong on what we believe in, but it clashes with the belief of another person, and what you believe is your truth. Another definition of belief is an acceptance that something exists or is true, especially one without proof. And I haven't personally come across them, but I believe there are people who believe in extraterrestrial life. Or it can also mean having trust or faith or confidence in someone or something. Now, when I wrote the book, in the family context, I then defined beliefs are the sum total of principles, philosophies, and opinions of its members. So let's just unpack it a bit. You as a family, having to live with each other for the next hundreds of years or however long you're here on this life, and then the offspring after you, you can make, this is by no means a limited list. I just give you a few topics to discuss amongst yourself and come to consensus. And what do you believe about a creator and spirituality? And you can imagine if some people don't believe that there's a creator and they just by chance, how do you build for the future versus someone who strongly believes in a creator and a purpose? And I'm talking about purpose. Talk about it. Do you believe you have a purpose individually? And do you believe you have a purpose as a family? And what do you believe about that purpose? Because if you don't believe you have a purpose, it's very difficult to get yourself motivated around all the pain that you'll have to take as a family to start getting all the stuff in place that you need to get in place to navigate through this current minefield of economy. Then what are your beliefs about money and resources? And we may have touched on it last week, but some people have a view that money is evil. Other people know that money is not anything. It's just neutral. It's in the hands of people and how they apply it. What's your belief about resources? Are they limitless or are they limited? So if you have a scarcity mentality about resources, you will operate and act differently than someone who is constantly looking to understand more about the nature of resources so that he can multiply resources. Ask yourself topics like marriage. What is your view on marriage? And you'll be surprised in our current modern era how people have various views on marriage. So I don't want to give you my view on it, but I'm just happy that I found a wife way back that could walk the walk with me, and that today, even in the tough times, we can still work through these things together. And things like job versus work. Sarah, one of our leaders, did a session a couple of weeks ago about job versus work. So work is almost similar to what is your purpose here on earth. And that what you do then is your work, and you can't walk away from it. It's what you just you're designed to do. Whereas a job, lots of people have had different jobs in their lives, and a job per se is not bad, but a job is not necessarily your work. And a happy person is a person who can get a job that is actually what he likes to do, his work. So as you go through this list, keep asking yourself, are these beliefs enabling or disabling? So like that very first one I mentioned, if you think you created by chance and there was nothing, and then magically there was an amoeba, and an amoeba grew to become a monkey, and a monkey become a man. Well, I tell you what, that takes a lot more faith than to believe in divine design, and that there's a creator who's designed these things, because if he then designed it, there must also be purpose behind it. But anyway, you decide for yourself, and whatever you then agree on as a family and believe, for you, that'll be. So just some of the examples that I wrote in my book in 2017 as examples are these three: that we believe that every human being is created for a purpose by a creator that loves us. Another belief is we believe that the creator that created us to live in this time period has already provided in all our needs for the present and the future. And another belief I wrote down was, we believe in a world that is designed for abundance, more than enough for everybody. It is our purpose in life, though, to find out how to use the resources entrusted to us to extract the maximum value for the benefit of ourselves and our community, whilst ensuring we don't deplete the resources, but grow it for future generations. So go through this exercise with your family, write it down, and then have a meeting to come to an agreement on what are we believing as a family that will take us into the future. Right. And please, folks, feel welcome to make some notes as I talk, and then right at the end, we will have a chance for some questions and answers. Now, the topic of wealth. There are actually more than these various capitals, but I'm just picking on these three to give you a different view on wealth. So human capital, intellectual capital, and physical capital. And then on each of these topics, we look at what do we mean by that, the definition, and we'll give you an example how you should establish a starting point on each of these capital resources. So a human capital definition is about all those items. It's about the maximum well-being of all the members of your family. That means if any one of your family are sick or in financial stress, it spills over into the lives of the other families. So you can't escape the fact that you are intertwined in your lives as a family. So how well are the members of your family? Do they have accommodation? Do they have a job, a source of income? Are they healthy? So think of meet the needs of basic requirements. Maximum involvement of the members is another item. You don't want out of a family of 5 or 10 people, one person to call the shots, because when that person passes on or something happened to him, the rest of the family don't know what to do. But a functioning family have worked out the strengths of each of the members and then maximize the involvement of the members. So for instance, one member is good with communication. Let that person run your WhatsApp group amongst the members. Another person is maybe good on accounting or sussing out various investment ideas. So get everybody involved in their area of strength. Then I put the point there, dignity of work. Understand, doesn't matter how rich your family one day become, whether you become billionaires or trillionaires, if you don't make sure every member of the family is gainfully employed in some sort of a work, that's when all this mess happens when new generations just mess up with the wealth of the family, and they do all sorts of things because they don't have an appreciation of work. But the good thing is, if you do become this family, people can then be released in that which they love to do, whether it's then take a trip and do photography around the world or whatever it is that people want to do, but get everybody. Then I put there geographical footprint. Your wealth as a family is measured also over what physical area are you distributed. So if the whole family, 2, 3, 4 generations just live in one town, it's great for interconnection, but if there's a big risk and something happened to wipe out the economy of that town, or like this coronavirus comes and kill a lot of people, you are not protected as a family. Whereas the very wealthy families make it a point to spread their geographical footprint. And it doesn't just have to be with physical members of the family having to live there, but also in terms of your businesses. And then we touch again on spiritual values, because you're driven by these spiritual values, and agree on that and talk about it and educate. So the elderly people should be a strong influence and input in terms of the spiritual values. Then community influence. Involve your family in reaching out to the community. I see quite a few families who are now involving their family members and children to go out and help pack food parcels and go and dish out food parcels. That's for now, but there's other ways to become involved in the community. I know some of our members are very involved in the community in terms of helping to look at business opportunities or giving extra classes. So there's no limit to how you can become involved, but rich families who really have an impact are those who also have a strong community influence. So what would then be that starting point for the human capital? I use the outline of an income statement and a balance sheet. Now, income statement basically says what is bringing me income or value, and expenses is what do I spend in order to get that income or value. So when it comes to human capital, we're looking at the improvement, so year on year. So if you have a starting point now, in 2021, you then revisit this and you look at where was your family last year this time, and now a year later, has there been improvement in the members' health and well-being? So it could be that a year ago you could not afford medical aid, now you can afford medical aid. Has there been additions to the family, a new baby, or one of the children got engaged and married? Has there been an increase in geographical footprint, and has there been an increase in community influence? So that just helps you to focus on the really important stuff in life. Then you had to spend some money in order to get that value. So what would be money spent? Well, it could be assistance to members in terms of health and basic needs. So a person who really needs a vehicle to get to his place of work, and you clubbed together and you found a way to give that person a car, or help him with a loan, or medical aid. Investment in community projects. And then I've just put their cost of family rituals. I personally like to, around November, take my family for a weekend to one of these hot water resorts. And just as a family, those who can attend it, we just spend time and we talk about a legacy, how blessed we are, and then the children get a chance to meet their nephews and nieces if they can come. And we as the elders talk about the future. Now, you don't necessarily have all the answers all the time, but it's important to have these sort of family rituals as well. So a balance sheet talks about the base that you operate from. So how strong is the family's capital, human capital? That would be if you have an updated CV of each of the members. So often family members live past each other, You don't know that one of your members have just completed, call it a certificate in becoming an electrician, but you keep on using other electricians instead of using your family member. And that's just one example. And also just a verbal progress report on health and well-being. And then an important one is to update the family story. When we talk about the Constitution next week, we'll come to this topic. But understand the family story is all the time unfolding. And then also on your agreed values. As time goes on, you will have deeper and deeper insight into the values that drives your family and how it's important to stay with those families going forward. Intellectual capital. What do we mean by that? Intellectual capital is the accumulated knowledge of members. It's the quality of communication to and amongst members. So how clear are you communicating and how fast? So if something happened, everybody knows about it. And it's very important to start, even though you're not in place with it yet, but you start selling the vision that one day the fund will be so strong that you want to see that future generations would first apply for a job within the family structures before they go and look out for a job outside. And then have incentives so that the highest achievers in the family can start stepping into the family governance. Develop tools to teach younger members the family stories and prepare them for future governance roles, and we'll unpack this a little bit more next week. And then help each member to achieve maximum intellectual capacity. And by that, we just don't mean you have to study academically. If people are good with their hands or people have other learning modes, release them in their different intelligences. So it could be arts, it could be music, it could be working with their hands. Those are all very important things that can benefit the total family going forward. And then diversity in studying cultures and languages. Where you can afford, doesn't matter whether you do it in luxury or barely get by, but try and travel. Meet different cultures, even where you live. Reach out of your comfort zone to other cultures and study languages. One software that I can highly recommend is Duo, D-U-O, Lingo. It's free software, and you can literally study any language anywhere in the world. I'm currently busy studying French, and it's one of the best apps I found to help you in studying that language. All right, so that takes us to intellectual capital. Then lastly, some examples. So income statement would be then the income side, the value add would be what new skills and qualifications have been achieved by the members of our family. On expense side, what did we invest in the education of our members? And that expense could well be money invested to travel overseas and learn new cultures. In the balance sheet items would then just be keep on updating the skills and qualifications of the members in the CV. In physical capital, so it's not just rands and cents. Here we talk about how do I grow my physical capital? One thing is to minimize loss from excessive interest, lower the debt. And for that, we can advise you to go to some debt counseling. And our GIGS loan link share interest-free product is a good product to also start building up. Second one is to minimize non-producing assets, cars, clothes. Always ask yourself, is this asset working for me or not? And rather maximize income-producing assets like businesses, property, and so forth. Minimize risk. You need insurance, you need medical aid, and other places that your business might have a problem in. And then follow an investment strategy. In our budget exercise, we teach people about the 4 envelope strategy, start applying that, and we also then address them on the topic of investment to say, put 40% of your money in very liquid, risk-free assets, 30% slightly more risky, slightly less liquid, 20% in more long term, and with 10% you can take chances so that if it comes off, then you have 50% plus growth, even 100% plus growth. But then if you lose, at least you only lose 10% of the money. But that's just some ideas. And if you haven't yet done the the budget exercise, please go to gig-institute.com and just do that exercise. Then assemble a strong wealth team around you. So those people who are gig members, over time you'll get through our wealth interviews, you'll meet your legacy coach and your wealth coach, and through them you'll have access to people who are specialists in tax, accounting, media, legal, investment, and so forth. Then increase the value and the quality of your networks in the areas of service, advice, and funding. And a very good network I can recommend is then our Community Chamber of Commerce. And in the end, make sure your portfolio of investments are spread over different asset classes and different geography. So what would the income statement look like? The value side would be, how many income sources do I have for the fund, and what are the results of these income sources? And on the expense side is, what does it cost me to operate the fund and to keep growing these income sources? And on the balance sheet, what are my assets and liabilities according to normal accounting procedures? But you'll see that I've just added a further provisor. Understand our definition of assets, only things that generate income, various versus liabilities that reduce income. So to summarize, this starting point have taken us through values, beliefs, and then wealth. And then wealth, we said it's human capital. And the idea there is then draw a family tree, add the ages of each of the people in the family, and then see what do they need in terms of accommodation, employment, health, and you can add to that list. On the intellectual capital side, look at the qualifications of your current family members. What specific skills do they have, or what would they like to add to their repertoire? What are they interested in? What talents do they have? And release them in that areas. And then on physical capital, you only have two things to keep on worrying through the rest of your life. Income, have as many sources as possible. Expenses, minimize it as much as possible. So ask yourself, how many of those income sources do I have? Then list your assets and what cash flow do you get out of each of the assets. And if an asset doesn't work for you, rather sell it, get rid of it. List liabilities and what does it cost you in terms of cash flow. And then some of the liabilities are necessities like the food we eat, the insurances, but then see if you can work smart and extract wealth seeds out of those areas. So folks, that then brings us to the end of tonight's session. Next week, we will go into how to develop a family constitution. And I'm just finishing off there. Anyone wants to contact me, there's my cell number, 083-302-9840, or they can send me an email to jasper@gigtrust.co.za. But I'm just going to get out of the screen, and then we're going to open the floor for a few people who may have some questions. So if you have a question or a comment, please raise your hand, and we will open your mic to give you a chance to give a comment or a question. Any hand? There's a hand. Sarah, let me unmute you. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Coach, and good evening, everyone. Mine is a comment, I think particularly for, the young and the single. In the book Legacy, when we talk about disabling attitudes within this chapter, it talks about, I'm single and I don't need to concern myself about my successive generation. I just want to encourage and say to those who are young and single that take the time to really just, go through this exercise. It might look daunting at the beginning, but it will give you so much clarity as you go through it, which will also help you when you have to decide on the life partner that you are going to choose to get married. So you are actually at a very advantaged place if you're a young person and you are single, because if you really do it, and I really encourage you to do it, it's daunting at the beginning, but once you start, it brings clarity. And again, like I'm saying, especially when marriage is concerned, because when you talk about generations, we are talking about families, and it starts really at marriage level. And if you're with someone who, you know, who does not share your values and does not share this constitution, then you're going to be very frustrated. But when you do it beforehand, then you know it's easier for you to choose the partner and make a decision whether that particular person will be someone to go with in your life. So that's just what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Tony, I see your mic is open.
Yes. Good evening, Jasper and everybody else. I just wanted to comment on one part of your presentation when we got to the question of belief. And you said we must agree on our beliefs in this family. I have a feeling that that might be more difficult these days than one would have hoped in the past. Do you have any shall we say, fallback plan if you have a member of the group who has definitely not got the same beliefs as the others do?
Tony, that's a very valid question. You know, when I started this exercise with my two boys, I wasn't really sure where they stand, although they grew up in a Christian home. But we first agreed on values. And I think if you, at least as a family, can agree on values, then that takes you way forward. And often values is then just an extension of your beliefs, and it's then easier to find beliefs. So I think, you know, beliefs is one of those topics that if we just look at all of us, we, during our lives, we don't necessarily end up believing what we believed as kids. And I'm taking a stupid example like Father Christmas. We grew up believing in Father Christmas and then later realized there is no Father Christmas. But it's a valid comment. And I think it's not necessarily the initial stumbling block, but there's a few key things that, like I keep on hammering in terms of if you don't believe in a creator that has a plan and that we are here by design, and you really believe in things just happen by chance, I don't personally think such a person can be very successful in building a generational fund with a vision of families and generations that goes into 100 years after his death. But that's just my belief, and I don't have hard facts to back it up. But I don't know if that's a sort of comment or answer that you are looking for.
Yeah, that is helpful, Jasper. Thank you.
All right. Any other comment or question someone wants to add? I see Stella. You're unmuted, Stella. Okay. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah. Thanks, Jasper. I just want to concur what Sarah was saying. Was it Sarah? Sorry, I don't know.
Sarah.
Sarah, yes. About teaching young ones, because I was also thinking when you were talking about this, that, you know, for me, I'm at an advanced, can you call it, stage in my life, you know, and I can see the benefit for young ones to start with this setting out a plan for the future. So I think it's, for me, I think it is a bit more difficult because I feel like I don't have a lot of time left. You understand where I'm coming from? I think if you're younger, it is easier to get the buy-in from everyone. But as you become older and the kids are out of the house, they've got their own lives, they're living in different continents. It's a bit more challenging to get the buy-in of the whole family. So I hope what I'm saying is making sense. Maybe you can give me some advice how to.
Well, we actually covered it last week when we talked about the different stages of family life, and we agreed that once your children are teenagers or even have left the house, it's a far more trickier situation because they're very much set in their beliefs and in their ways forward. So you have to navigate very carefully. But I think the word that comes up in my mind is consistency. So when we grew up, before we became mature adults, we were pretty much all over the show. We would be strongly passionate about issue A, and then later on issue B. And our children grew up in those times when we flitted all over the show. Now, it's going to take them a while to see how serious are you about this new belief of yours. And also until such time as they become parents themselves, that initial stages is, they read all the books about family and the rearing children, and they initially don't believe you, but by child number 2 or 3, they start waking up to the fact that, all right, you've done it as well, and, they start talking to you. And I think the key thing is to be consistent. So even if you have to start all by yourself, in putting these things down, in a way it's then quicker and easier. And I would say where you have a chance, without making it uncomfortable, but start bringing in issues like ask their advice on values. What do they think of this kind of a value? Do they agree or disagree? And about belief. So, you instead of making them to sit down, you could still involve them. And over time, if you've done enough of this, it's no longer you in convincing them. They are now convinced because these seeds of thought have now been planted in their minds. And also give them the book to read. Give them some of these sessions to listen to. And they may not do it now, but maybe in time to come, they listen to it. So I don't know if that helps.
Yes, it does. Because I was actually thinking while we were going through this presentation that I want to give it to my son and introduce him to it. He's 26, and I think it not committed yet in a relationship, but this can give him very good groundwork and a platform to start. Yeah, so thank you for that, Jasper.